damn ball, RJ.
And I grew up watching Larry, so, him being a legend, getting to throw the ball to him will definitely be a little crazy. Getting back with Christian, the connection that we had, growing up, I can't wait. I know we got a lot of other guys, but, like you said, those two guys will definitely be, especially be back and, getting to mix up with them.
Kyler Murray talking about some of his new teammates with the Arizona Cardinals. The OU product, taken number 1 in the NFL draft last Thursday night. And with that being said, we'll bring in a man that needs no introduction. YouTube sensation, content extraordinaire, OU Insider, OUinsider.com. Check him out on Twitter, YouTube, all of it. RJ Young. What's going on, RJ?
Hey, fellas. How you doing? Lots, actually. I listened to the show, arguing about the defensive backs, arguing about...
Yeah, not very often do I get a text from RJ during a segment, and I'm like, RJ, listening.
What did RJ say?
He always listens. No, RJ, go ahead. We were referencing defensive backs at OU. Can you name guys who really developed, who did well from their freshman to senior year, really good development? And you got to go find them because that, RJ, it just hadn't been the case. It hadn't been the norm at OU over the last 5 or 7 years.
Nah, man. You got to go back to Aaron Colvin, right? I think third round. That's the highest draft pick that Oklahoma's had. Well, I think Jordan Phillips. I think he went in the second round at defensive tackle. But you're looking at the secondary in particular, it's Aaron Colvin. It's Tony Jefferson. It used to be Zach Sanchez, but then he went into a league that folded. And now you're looking at this defensive backfield, and you're asking good questions about who's going to step up and do what. But I also think that, there's a lot of guys coming in that are going to compete for jobs. One of them I wrote about here on OUinsider.com, Jeremiah Cradell. Lots of good things being said about him. He thinks he's going to start learning at safety, then possibly move to nickel. Give some depth there for Buki and or Pat Fields, depending on how you go. But I think one of the things that folks that are just deep into the weeds about OU are going to want to talk about, we need to bring to the forefront. Drew Sanders flipped his commitment last night to Alabama. Yep. And that got really weird. One, because dude played tight end or was going to play tight end. He's a quarterback, he's an athlete. And it looks like he's going to play linebacker at Alabama. And that's weird for a number of reasons. But I think the weirdest part of this, because we're on the Twitters and we follow the Twitters, you get Pete Golden tweeting out the flex emoji, and it got retweeted by Mike Stoops. Mike Stoops is really close with Drew Sanders, and he's over there at Alabama as an analyst. So now it's getting real cloak and dagger, and there's some palace intrigue because Drew Sanders doesn't say a whole lot about anything. And last I talked to him, he wasn't even interested in playing linebacker. But apparently if Alabama says play linebacker, you're going to go play linebacker.
It just kind of a crazy, unique situation, where it would be hard to think that this kid has grown up his whole life on the offensive side of the ball, starts playing some defense, and this happens in high school out of necessity. Your team needs you. Hey, coach, let me play both ways. But then all of a sudden, like you're starting to base your decision in college on a position that you kind of just started on the side of the ball. You just started playing. It's just weird, very unique, very weird. And as you said, the kid doesn't say a whole lot about that. RJ, when you look at this overall from OU, you made the comment yesterday when we had you on 95 and 96, the last time OU did not have a defensive player drafted in the NFL. Alex Grinch, to me, I've seen it. I've just seen it close, firsthand. When a new defensive coordinator comes in, you got to do it one of two ways, or you can kind of mesh them together. You have to be a little bit of fire and brimstone. You have to tell people we've been awful. We need to get better. This is what we need to do. But at the same time, you can't just run guys off. How do you think he's done at being able to get guys to buy in, especially older guys who are honestly probably just trying to get their game at another level? Because, we talk about the development. The best way to get to the NFL draft is to get better when you're in college, and that obviously hadn't happened, so maybe they believe it can under Alex Grinch.
Absolutely, and I think, to wit, the guy to watch for me isn't necessarily Neville Gallimore, it's Kenneth Murray Jr., because that guy is tailor-made to play at the next level, 6'2", 240. I think Bleacher Report's Matt Miller had him as a first-round pick based on his film alone. That's the guy that a lot of OU fans used to drag through the mud and forgot that he had 155 tackles. And you bring up the point about, hey, all we've seen is guys at OU regress as juniors and seniors, and Kenneth Murray Jr. is heading into his junior year. and coming off of never playing middle linebacker before he got to OU, learning how to play the position on the fly next to Emmanuel Bill, then doubling his tackle total the next year, and he's going into a year where he's going to be eligible for the draft. And if he has any kind of a season like he did last year, and this defense looks like any kind of good, that's a guy that I'm watching and saying, hey, he's buying in. And I know there's a lot of folks that are high on Deshaun White and want to see him play. And that's a guy that I'm really interested to see where he fits, because it feels like you could end up with Kenneth Murray Jr. and Deshaun White playing next to each other in the middle of that defense as your two inside linebackers. But you're also wanting to know, are any of the secondary kids buying in? And I think Parnell Motley might be one of those guys. Trey Brown for sure is another. We'll see what happens with Pat Fields. I'm high on him, especially after his Orange Bowl performance. But in the secondary, I wonder when it's going to be true that you put a first-round pick into the NFL. And I don't see that today out of the secondary. And I really am interested to see what the 2019 class looks like coming in, even as a lot of those guys were not recruited by Grinch.
You know, RJ, one person that would have a chance to be a first-rounder in a few years is Dax Hill. We mentioned earlier how he's leaving state, and so is Slusher going to Oregon. Do you think anybody they're bringing in this year compares to them talent-wise, where they could say, all right, we lost those guys, but look at these guys we're bringing in?
Yeah, Jeremiah Cradell, Woody Washington, Jaden Davis, all true freshmen coming in, aren't even on campus yet. All of those dudes can play. I'm as high as anybody on Dax Hill, right? Particularly coming out of my hometown and out of Booker T. Washington. And I was high on Josh Proctor. And I was high on Miles Slusher. But I also recognize that you want to get who you want to get. And for the most part, Grinch didn't have an opportunity to recruit those guys. Now, we could talk about where these guys go and how highly valued they are. But these are also guys that Oklahoma State couldn't land. And these are also guys that couldn't get a sniff from the University of Tulsa. You know, so I mean, I get it. And I'm as hard on anybody about where those guys end up and why. I thought Miles Slusher should have at least got an offer. He got an offer from Alabama. He can't get an offer from Oklahoma at a Broken Arrow. That's a bad look. And that's what it is right now. It's optics. Because if the defense ends up being top 25, top 30, we're all going to look at this and go, okay, fine. Right? But Dax also needs to develop, just like Miles Slusher needs to develop. And that's why those stars are so important. 5 stars means we expect you to be a first-round draft pick. So that means wherever Dax Hill decided to go, we expected that dude to end up as the number 1 overall pick or in for some team in the draft, right? So I get it, but I also think that you need to build your defense out the way you want to build it, and the Dax Hill ship has sailed. And unless you can convince those guys to transfer in, I don't think you can. I mean, there's no sense crying over spilled milk. I think that's the expression.
Yeah, well, they could probably try to flip Slusher, but you said they didn't even offer him.
Yeah, I think that's a little different scenario, obviously. I talked with RJ Young, OUinsider.com. You can find his content there, also on his YouTube channel. You know, this gets back to the development side of things. I get it. There's a reason why Alabama and Clemson have a lot of defensive guys drafted. They got high-level guys. They develop those guys. Guys go play there because they know they're going to go to the next level. They know they're going to be coached hard. And so you got to just at least get to that point defensively where you feel confident enough that you're going the right direction. Guys are buying in. And it doesn't matter who lines up for you. They're going to go play. And I always make the comparison to Iowa State. You know, last 3 years, they've consistently probably been the best defense just week in and week out. It's tough. They make life hard on people. And it's not like they don't have a whole lot of guys that were offered by OU, if any. And so it's a philosophy. It's a way you play and all that stuff. And I'm just thinking, OU's got talent. They got guys that come out of high school that can flat out play. You know, can they take those guys, get them into the system, get them believing, get their philosophy going, and take the defense to the next level? Because RJ, their offense has been so historically good. And Dave brought up a good point. You know, how does Lincoln think? Like, gosh, if I just would have had anything defensively, we'd be sitting with a national championship right now.
Well, I mean, you could also say, hey, you're in a national championship game in 2008. What if we had DeMarco Murray? I don't really think you get anything out of thinking that way right now as we talk about it going into the summer. But I take your point about scheme and philosophy, and that's also why I'm saying Alex Grinch has to walk a fine line. Yeah, fire and brimstone is what we all want to hear, but we're not the dudes being yelled at. And I always tell people the optics change when you're the person being yelled at about how much you suck. Because if you yell at me about how much I suck, I'm going to fold on you. I know that about myself. I need positive reinforcement. And I don't think I'm that much different from a 19-year-old kid who's moving states away from home, who was recruited by this one guy who all of a sudden is telling him he's garbage, and all of a sudden you lose all self-esteem and everything else goes with you. It's a really slippery slope that you have to just be careful about. And I think what he talks about to media is not how he talks to those kids. Because if you talk to kids like that, you're not going to get the best out of them.
Eloquently put. Very eloquently. We're gonna hear you on Sunday. Fight me. I'm also gonna have you on Thursday, unless Brandon throws you the curveball. You'll be ready tomorrow to come out of the bullpen, I guess, if you need to, right?
Like Jordan Hicks with that sinker, man.
RJ, thanks.
See you, RJ.
All right, fellas.